کنفرانس در واشنگتن. سیاست آمریکا در درخاورميانه و ایران. حفاظت از اشرف. 2 ژوئن 2011 12 خرداد 1390.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. A pleasure to see a number of you that I had the opportunity to interact with while at the State Department, and pleased to join this distinguished panel. And I would argue fundamentally that the best way to effect change in Iran is to continue to support very aggressively, very vocally, and very concretely the remarkable change that is occurring across the region. In essence, answer a question that ultimately, must be posed to the leadership in Tehran. If in Tahrir Square, why not in Tehran? And I actually am cautiously optimistic that change is inevitable. The change that we're seeing in the Middle East cannot be reversed. The Middle East cannot go back to where it was. Now, that's not to say that change is inevitable. We're obviously already seeing a counter-revolution, if you will. What we're seeing in the Middle East is a revolution, but it also involves evolutions, if you will, that obviously the governments in Tunisia and Egypt were caught by surprise. But in Syria, in Bahrain, in Tehran, even in China, they're not being caught by surprise. They're now responding aggressively to what they're seeing, and ultimately the best policy that the United States and the national community can have is to do whatever it takes to promote the kind of change that we want to see in the Middle East, and ultimately, whether it's sooner, we hope, that change will inevitably come to Tehran as well, because Tehran is not immune to what we're seeing going on in Tahrir Square. But inevitably, with the reality of the 21st century, the connectivity that people have, the connectivity that we did see in the 2009 election in Iran that was stolen from the people of Iran, the power of the young people, many of you who are here today, these are the agents of change. They cannot be denied. They can be delayed, but they cannot be denied. Now, when you look at what's happening in the Middle East right now, obviously we will see new governments in Tunisia and Egypt. They will not be perfect. And I think as we look for historical parallels, I'm approaching my 60th birthday, so in my lifetime, among the seminal events, obviously was the events between 1989 and 1991, and I do think there are some important parallels. Now, what should U.S. policy be, going forward? I just left the administration 2 months ago. I was standing at a podium much like this as the events were happening in Tunisia and Egypt and beginning in Libya at the time I left. Obviously, the United States was cautious, and there's been some criticism of the administration's caution, both in the context of Egypt, but also going back a couple of years in the context of Iran. It is the policy of the United States of America to see a different kind of government, a more constructive and responsible actor in the region in Iran. The question is not if, the question is when and how to effect that change. And what we've seen since then is the steady delegitimization of the regime in Tehran, and a fundamental shift even in Moscow and in Beijing to attitudes towards Tehran. Now, as Stu pointed out, some of these countries are problematic in terms of full implementation of sanctions and keeping the kind of pressure on the Tehran regime that is necessary, but let there be no doubt we are seeing both on the political side, on the economic side, certainly within Iran itself, fissures that have developed. They are visible. We see them regularly in the current tussle that exists between President Ahmadinejad and those who are opposing him. The President said the other day in his speech that it is the policy of the United States to support those who are reformers in the region. We have to make sure that we are translating that political commitment into real action and also real resources. We have militarily intervened in Libya. We are demonstrating assertively to those who are resisting change that the international community is prepared to take aggressive action when necessary to protect civilians, but more importantly to preserve forces of reform for fundamental change where power transfers from the autocrats that have been in power for 30 or 40 years to the people. That is our policy. How can we best do that? I think that while we have been cautious, and understandably so up to this point, it is now time for the United States to more assertively embrace publicly as well as privately and through concrete action and the commitment of real resources to the administration, to the United States policy to promote change that will start in places like Tunis and Cairo and inevitably arrive in Tehran as well. I would like to see the administration recognize that President Assad is not a reformer. He could very well be a tool of those who are resisting change. Assad is not going to reform. Assad has to go. If Gaddafi has lost his legitimacy, so has President Assad. We're not going to go back to where it was. Now, Stu and others have outlined that there are risks involved here. Absolutely. There are unknowns involved here. Absolutely. But if the region is going to change, while we, the United States, cannot control this change, I think we have to give credit to the region. These are indigenous movements. Change is going to occur from the bottom up. It's not going to be imposed from the outside in. But we have to be in a position where we can help shape change and support people and institutions that can bring democratic governance, to the region as a whole, including to Tehran. Options with respect to Iran have to be on the table, but we have to make sure that there are as many non-military options available to the President and the Secretaries of State and Secretaries of Defense as possible. So we have to make sure that we actually have not only the right strategy, but we have to have the tools and the resources available, whether they're economic, political, social, democratic. And this is the message that we need to say to Congress. Congress has a vitally important role to play, and Congress showed last year the very important role it played in passing national sanctions to augment the UN Security Council resolution that has put real pressure on Iran and has, as Stu said, raised the cost of Iran doing business. But we have to make sure that we continue for as long as it takes. We have to show the same kind of commitment at this opportunity for fundamental change in the Middle East, the same kind of determination and commitment that we showed throughout the Cold War, an effort that we ultimately were successful in. I think we can have the same success in helping the Middle East transform, including fundamental change in Tehran, but we have to continue to show the same kind of commitment that we did over the past half century. Thank you very much.
My history with Iran begins a quite long time ago when I was President Carter's chief domestic advisor in the White House, and we had the November 79 hostage-taking and the Iranian Revolution, which immediately preceded it, creating the first radical Islamic State dedicated and supportive of terror. This has caused one of the most profound geopolitical changes in our era, one we have lived with now for over 30 years. It's involved 4 sets of UN sanctions over Iran's nuclear program,